I'm Dick Ewing, owner of Ewing Transport.
James Bike, owner of JB Geotech Services.
I'm Kent Sennett. I own Kent's Carpentry, Excavator Services.
Bud Rich. I am Business Development Community Relations for Summit Camps.
Good morning, everyone. Stu Van Bibber, partner with ERM Consulting Group.
Thank you. Next, I'm going to ask you guys to do a brief sort of introduction history of yourself and your company and how the Indigenous participation works within your companies. Next, we're going to go to history of your business. So everybody's jumping ahead, so we'll try to keep it on track today.
Yeah, I'm Dick Ewing, owner of Ewing Transport. It is a 100% owned First Nations company. I was born and raised in Mayo, Yukon. And Ewing Transport is probably one of the oldest companies in the Yukon. It started with my grandfather. He was stationed in Dawson City during the Second World War. He was a sergeant major there. He liked the Yukon so much that he came back and he wanted to start a business in the Yukon. So he went to Dawson City. He couldn't really find a business he really liked to buy, so he went to Mayo. He had a choice of buying the Chateau Mayo, the bar, or a sawmill. So he bought the sawmill. It was a steam-driven sawmill on the banks of the Stuart River. And he started producing lumber there, which he supplied to the community of Mayo and to United Kino Hill Mines. So my family was in the sawmill business for probably 50 years, and we employed most of the people of Mayo, along with a lot of the First Nation people. So we expanded from there into a construction outfit, and we worked at just about every mining property around in the Mayo area until even today. So it's interesting, we started supplying timber and working at Kino Hill, and then we worked out at Victoria Gold for 16 years, and when that came to an end, we went back to work for All North and Hecla, so we made a full circle. We're back to where we started. Anyhow, with the First Nation, being a First Nation and having a First Nation company, we decided to put a group together with two of my friends that I've known all my life, and we formed a partnership to go after some of the work in the Yukon in our area, and it's worked out very well for us. Thank you.
Well, mine not as long as Dick's legacy, but same born and raised in Mayo. I started off doing summer work in between my years of college for an engineering firm. About 25 years in that, then was taken over by a much bigger firm, and that didn't seem to suit me very well, so I went out on my own, and I've been on my own for about 8 years now. And as Dick alluded to, in partnership now, and seeking opportunities that fit within our purview and what we're able to do well. And same assessment has worked out really well.
Kent Sennett. I'm an NND Nutchinnuck-Dun First Nation member, born and raised in Mayo. Done a number of jobs through the years, working for doing carpentry, running machinery. Went to school, worked with government, learned that I didn't want to be in an office. Went back to carpentry, and then the past 10 years or so, I've been using a mini excavator and skid steers, doing a lot of work for private people, and keeping good relationships with all the companies like Ewing Transport and others. And if you're willing to work, there's always work in Mayo, so just keep busy. Same as these guys, I guess. We just all got together and start working towards bigger projects that we have available in our area as a team, and it's been working out. So.
I'm Bud Rich. I was also born in Mayo, way back in 1968. My dad was born there in 1928. Dick has a nice cabin up near where our family homestead was on Mayo Lake many years ago. Family history is that they went up there prospecting, looking for gold and that, and ended up working for guys like Frank Wernicke and that, just being stakers and making money where they could, and at some point in time, I'm probably pretty sure that my dad ended up running equipment for Dick's grandfather at some point in time along the way, because he ended up being an equipment operator, and it's just the way things worked up there, is you worked for who you could when you could. I went to high school with Mr. James Bike here. Our claim to fame is we were the two best looking guys in J.B. Clark in our grad class. We were the only two guys in our grad class. I see Don laughing at us over there. So, yeah, and I work with Summit Camps. We work all the way across Canada. 95% of our business is with Indigenous partners. If we don't have a partner, we knock on the door. When I had an opportunity to go to work with Alexco, of course, the first thing I did was go to Mayo and knock on the door at the office and say, hey, we have an opportunity to work here, but I don't want to do it without you. They put me towards a Dev Corp, and ever since then, the last 10 years now, we've been operating the camp there. We operated the camp and installed camp at Vic Gold. We're doing Mayo B right now, all with the nation, all working up there. Working hard to try and get employees out of Mayo, as everybody on this panel might say at some point in time. That's a little bit of a struggle, but that's there. But we also work in Ross River territory, and we have a very different story getting employees out of Ross River. It's actually very successful there. So partnerships is how we do our business up there, because we are not an Indigenous owned company. But that's it. I'll pass it off to Ken, or not to Ken, to Stuart.
Good morning, everyone. Stu Van Bibber. I am a Selkirk First Nation member. Though born in Mayo, I've got deep roots in the Yukon, and when Laura Lee asked me to sit on this panel, I was halfway in the door because Laura Lee asked me, and then when I asked who was on the panel, Dick Ewing and Bud Rich, I said, I got to do this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing, though. You won't see me up here again. But to Dick Ewing, like, the reason why I came on here was because he was best friends with my grandpa, and my grandpa very much respected Dick. And Bud, well, I grew up with Bud at the United Keno Hill Mine, and he looked after me when I was a little one. But I have a long history in the Yukon, again, born and raised, a huge family, and I hold that near and dear to my heart. And when I was transitioning from my previous job, which was GM for Denicho Environmental Remediation, it was a bit of a dream job, I would say, and it was in the transition between then and where I'm at now. It was a bit of a tough decision, but I did my research and looked at all of the different companies out there, and ERM stood above the rest in terms of Indigenous engagement, and I'm now 3 years into this partner position, and happy to be here and happy to be on this panel. Thank you.
Well, you may have noticed there's a bit of a theme of both the North and Yukon here. But the only operating mine currently is in that space, so that is how this all came together. Next, I would like, and I'm going to start with you, Stu, because I know you are nervous to be here in the first place, and I'm grateful you made it. You're with a good group, because I know that when they gave you the list of who was coming, that was the second book in the book. Appreciate that. You are at ERM, and you're a partner there, and ERM has a lot of interest in Indigenous relations. So can you each, next, starting with Stu, speak to how you're incorporating Indigenous relations and Indigenous participation in the work you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. I'll be brief in the interest of time. It's quite a long story, but when I first looked at joining ERM, I looked at sort of the pedigree and the way they maneuvered in this space with Indigenous organizations and governments, and I quickly realized in sort of looking at ERM prior to joining that ERM had sort of innovated in this space for quite some time. And I'll use an example. 20 years ago, ERM partnered with the Tahltan Nation, negotiated through a really good friend of mine and mentor, Jerry Asp, created what is now known as Tahltan ERM, Environmental Management. It's a 20-year partnership where 51% is owned by the Tahltan Nation and 49% by ERM. In that space, though, and within that company, it's been incredibly successful. And you know, when it's interesting 20 years in, when you've seen the growth of individuals within the community, where we had junior people working boots on the ground, sampling water, and doing all of the things that are necessary for the work that we do. A lot of them are now executives. They're taking management positions in the companies. So again, 3 years into ERM, I've learned a lot, and I work with some amazing people in this space, and we look to continue that work that we've sort of innovated in BC, and maybe do some interesting work up here with all of you. Thank you.
Well, how we do it is a little different, of course, as we're not a First Nation-owned company. What we do is we do create First Nations-owned company. We have very different models because each community is different. You have to go in and talk with the community, and you have to find out what they need and where you fit. I'll talk about a relationship we have in Cold Lake, Alberta. It's outside of the Yukon, of course, but that relationship, Primco Dene First Nation, they absolutely manage and run everything, and we're more of an employment agency to help them get employees for their company. But they manage the contracts, the catering, the finances, absolutely everything. They've got all the capacity for that. Then we have other areas working with the nation in Manitoba right now, where they've been a have-not community, and now Alamos Gold is building a gold mine in their territory, so they have an opportunity, and Alamos is working with them. And we partnered with them, and one of the things we're doing there is trying to build that capacity up. So right now, we operate absolutely everything, and I go into the community often to try and get training, try and build up the community, try and get jobs in the area, because the whole area had no jobs forever except for occasional government contracts coming through. So each thing that we do in the Indigenous space, we work very diligently with our partners. When I'm working in the Mayo district, like with Mayo B project and with Hecla, and doing projects up there, I work very closely with NNDDC, but when I go up, I stop and visit at the office. I go to the grocery store, of course, and visit friends and people I've known my entire life up there. But that area holds a special spot in my heart, right? You're born and raised there, you start working there, you work underground at ELSA, and you start a career working from there, right? And I see people that I know in the crowd, and it's just a special place. One of the things that was different about Mayo years ago was very simply the fact that there was more work than workers. If you wanted to do something like the Ewings did, you had to probably turn contracts down, if I wouldn't be remiss there, because you just couldn't find enough people to do the things, right? Your dad worked on and off, and your uncle was the head of the union there. So having those opportunities is the main thing in the community, and then leveraging those to create opportunities in the community space, in the Indigenous space, but also the small communities of the north, right? Mayo is a mixed community and been a mixed community for 150 years now. And it's all been in and around mining and the success of that mining space. And without the opportunities, then everybody's just fighting over what little the government wants to give you. And no offense to government contracts and stuff like that, they can be good. We're doing Mayo B, but it's not consistent, and consistency is what we need to have good, strong Indigenous businesses and to have good, strong Yukon businesses.
But Kent, I know you have a unique perspective on this, so would you mind sharing?
Well, before the partnership, through the years, I've done a number of different jobs, like I said. Like Bud referred to, it's tough to get people to come to work in Mayo. I always tell people when contractors come in, everybody that wants to work is working. Usually the people that are working are overloaded because you get a name, you get to be known as a reliable person that can accomplish a lot and you put out a good product. So then more and more gets stacked onto your plate. So through the years, when I was doing carpentry, we would have up to 8 guys, but it was a steady thing where more than half the crew would show up less than half the time. So eventually, when the guy I was a partner with, he retired and left, I went on my own and just operated as a sole proprietor because I knew I would show up and I'm responsible for my own mistakes. So the problem always was, there's not enough of me to go around. When Dick and the boys came and talked to me about this idea, initially I was like, I've got too much to do already. But we just kept talking about it, and I think there's a really unique opportunity here for not only our community, but any Northern Shoshone communities, Mayo, Pelly, and Carmacks, as well as any Yukon local people or other First Nations. I feel like we've trained a lot of operators through the years in Mayo, and we've got a lot of really good operators. They're all getting on in age now. But the idea when we got together and we started talking and bidding on projects, the way I want to look at things now is we'll train the operators that we need, but I want to put the idea in kids' minds, the young kids in school, that there's all these opportunities for First Nations people we got to take advantage of. Not only First Nations people, local people. Because it seems to be anybody that's got that drive in them already, they tend to get educated, get trained, and they leave. The unfortunate part, there's a lot of us that like Mayo, that want to stay in Mayo and enjoy what we've got around us, hunting and fishing and work. So I want to provide the opportunity to those other kids that know they want to stay in Mayo to see the other options they have rather than going on SA or just working periodically here and there, seasonal work, to talk with us, figure out something like a little bit of training that we can help them out through some of the people we've got working for us to get some experience, and if they like it, push them to get that training. One thing that we just recently finished a project the other day, and a mine surveyor, the project that we were on just finished, it was hard to get somebody to come and survey. We had to bring people in from Whitehorse, from down south. But if we could get some youth to see the opportunity here, get the training, it's something that could be a really good business for the northern area, because it's hard to get people out of Whitehorse. They're busy enough here. And between Mayo, Pelly, Carmacks, and Dawson, there's a lot of work opportunity, not only surveying, but multiple other things. So I want people to think that way, that create education and training and business opportunities where we can add to our group, or say if we've got projects or other companies have projects, we're going to hire you because you're local, you're here. Don't worry about not having enough work. It's not going to be a problem. I think that's all. I'll let you guys talk a bit more about it.
Well, I think you covered off most of what needed to be said, really.
Yeah.
The only thing I would just add to it is just going beyond what is the typical labor operator roles, is get into more of the technical things. And Kent has touched on that, and trying to encourage you to start thinking about what that means, and the post-secondary education that is required of that, because we'd love to have like a construction manager, and the more educated you are, the more abilities and opportunities that come from that, not only for yourself, but as a company, having that person in that place. So just trying to encourage that, finding those people that have the drive and willingness to show up. That's half the battle right there, is that right attitude. So and Dick can probably expand on it. We have one person that turned out to be really surprisingly good.
So over the last probably 50 years, I mean, we've employed just about every First Nation, from one of the members in their family, to work for us. And one of the things we did, and this was quite a few years ago, we ran a heavy equipment training course for people from the NND and Selkirk First Nation. And what I did, I got the Yukon College, YTG and Advanced Education to throw in with us. So the government gave us a few different projects to do. So we had one-on-one training for all of these people, and the government thought we would probably go over budget on any of the jobs we did. We went over 5%. And a lot of these operators are still operating today. And I can name probably 10 of the guys that took this course that are still operating equipment. And then even this job we just finished, I give you a good example. We hired a young girl from NND. She had never even been around a heavy piece of equipment in her life. And we said, would you like to learn how to operate one of these big trucks? And she said, I'm terrified to do it. So we said, we will train you properly how to run this. So she had one-on-one with experienced operator for a week. And then she drove with a guy sitting beside her for about another week. And she turned out to be one of our best rock truck drivers. Nobody could believe she could back a big truck like that within 10 days. And she enjoys it now, but she has two other sisters that work for us at the same time. And we tried to talk them into seeing if they wanted to run heavy equipment. But they said that one was not, she was interested, she'd rather, what was she doing? Cooking, I guess. For who was it? What's the name of that outfit, Ken? Yeah, no, in the old Chinese building there. ITSE, yeah, that's where she works. Anyhow, we'd like to, most of the old operators in my area are gone, so we are going to try and hire as many young people in training as we possibly can, because there's such a shortage of employees that can do that type of work. Thanks.
This is awesome. We're going to be a little short on time, so I'm going to ask each person to give us one lesson learned or one opportunity they see in the future. I am going to take 30 seconds, though, to say I was at camp at Hecla when this young girl who used to be my neighbor, and I remember her being a toddler, came up and told me how excited she was that she was driving a rock truck. So it's really cool for these experiences to be lived. Dick, do you want to give us one lesson learned or one opportunity you see for the future in Indigenous participation?
I think that every First Nation person should have a chance, no matter where they come from and what they do, to give a good shot at some good employment. That's what we're trying to do.
Right encouragement that you find that the few people that have that right attitude and get them motivated. If the opportunity is there, they'll take it.
I feel like this spring I was at Yukon First Nation post-secondary grad ceremony. One of the guest speakers there said, as First Nations people, we got to start learning to work together. I think it's important that we have to start doing that, working together like we are, I guess, or even First Nations with other communities. Because if we don't start doing that, we're going to get left behind. There's we see it in Mayo, there's big companies from down south coming up all the time. It's as simple as them going and sign a contribution agreement with the development corporation, and then if you're on your own, it's really easy to be squeezed out. I mean, I think it's really hard to say, but none of us are at the scale or size to handle any of these big projects on our own. So we have to think of partnering, and make good sense of it, I guess. Go with it.
If I look ahead and listening to some of the talks yesterday, mining, as mining goes, the Yukon goes. Otherwise, it's government. We don't export things. We don't have factories like Ontario. We're not exporting gas products out like Alberta or British Columbia. So the private sector, the main private sector driver in the Yukon is exploration and mining. And right now we're very much into the beginning of a boom cycle. I think to increase the business opportunity for First Nations and Yukoners, these private enterprise things have to go forward. And of course, right ESG has to occur. All of that has to be there. But we need them moving forward. We need like Hecla needs to be able to crank their mill up to 600 tons, and then they can hire more miners. They can have more gear on site. They're going to be doing more exploration in the Mayo district. You've got BMC in the Ross River territory. Hopefully the judicial review ends, all of that. I'm already working with DNDC on that project and with LFN at the same time. And if everything works out, BMC says they will sit at the table with us and do a long-term catering contract, which then allows my company to create the opportunity to build training programs and not having changeover, and try and build something in that district as well. So I think the opportunity is there for nations and First Nations companies to push forward and help these private sector projects go forward in a proper way, right ESG, all that kind of stuff, but to allow for that expansion so that they can get bigger and that they can get together and they can create bigger companies. And maybe then when there is a private government sector contract, that they are actually one of the bidders on there, right? And it's not just always, you know, we see the big projects coming in up here, right? It's Kiewit, it's Graham, right? It's these companies, and then they hire a Yukon company to do a little bit of work here and a little bit of work here. But you watch them hauling their gear up the highway, and at the same time, you know, Dick's got rock trucks in town. You know, Too Tall's got gear in Mayo. It's and they give them a little piece here and there just to meet their little government part that they have to in their contract, instead of actually looking to them as a key supplier. And that actually bothers me, especially in the Mayo district, because these are my friends, right? And I grew up in and around these people my entire life. So, and you want your friends and family members and people you see in the communities to succeed. So success, I think, is going to come from private sector creating enough opportunity that the government stuff becomes the back burner, and these companies can grow, and that creates growth.
Boy, thanks, guys. I feel like
You told me to get them under 2 minutes.
as a large corporation in this space, and as a Yukoner, though, I'm fully aware of the complexity of working with nations, and you know, I think it's telling, you know, the speed of development that's going to be happening in the next little while. Myself speaking on behalf of my company, we have to do this very carefully. We can't go in thinking that we're going to take the majority of the work. We have to do things differently and approach things differently. And being a partner in ERM, I might get to leverage the depth that we have in this organization, but also show up in a good way, to which I look at our backlog for projects that we currently have in the Yukon, and 95% of the work that we do in the Yukon is with First Nations. But I do want to sort of lessons learned, I suppose, is reach out to those in industry. There are some amazing people out there in industry. Sitting in front of me is Matt Turner from Rockhaven, just a phenomenal guy, just stands by working with nations and wants to do good by nations. Gary Gazankas, similarly, I need to give a shout out to him. Laura Lee Johnstone, working at Hecla. There's amazing people out there, and they're good of heart. And if we all show up in a good way to work with First Nations amongst one another, I think we can truly make change in this next cycle of mining here. Thank you.